Okay, hello, good afternoon to all our wonderful secondary 3 and secondary 4, and Jessie, of course, to all the students. Good afternoon to all of you. And also to our amazing teachers that joining today, and also our amazing speaker for today's webinar. It's Mr. Leon Boy. Okay, correct me if I misspell your name. Okay, so who is he? So for Mr. Leon, okay, hello. Okay. So Leon Boy is a GUE. Somehow in Indonesia you can call it like GUE, it's me, but actually like GUE. And SSI is an instructor based in Singapore, Bali, and Jakarta. Running the Dive Education Center, Livingseas, Asia, and he's diving since 2005. And his first love has always been diving shipwrecks. Oh, this is fun, and remains so. But he's enjoyed all sorts of diving since, and loves being surrounded by fish. Wow, I also can imagine that I'm surrounded in a fish tank. Okay, that's fun. Having dived many places and seen firsthand the gradual degradation of the reef over time, he started to take a more serious approach towards conservation. And conservation has become one of the core values of Livingseas through the creation of multiple coral reef rehabilitation projects in Jakarta and Bali. So along with sustainable approach to dive operation and education. Wow, that's cool. Right, so without further ado, now I will give this time to Kathleen. Okay, our dear student Kathleen for introduction, and afterward, Mr. Leon, you shall start with your things, all right? So, come, Kathleen.
Good afternoon. It is my privilege to introduce our guest speaker for today's webinar on marine life conservation, Mr. Leon. Mr. Leon is a GUE and SSI instructor based in Singapore, Bali, and Jakarta, and is running the Dive Education Center, Livingseas, Asia. He is a graduate from National University of Singapore, where he took Bachelor of Computing Diving. In 2005, his first love has always been diving shipwrecks and remains so, but he's enjoyed all sorts of diving since he loves being surrounded by fish. Having dived many places and seen firsthand the gradual degradation of the reef over time, he started to take a more serious approach towards conservation. Conservation has become one of the core values of Livingseas through the creation of multiple coral reef rehabilitation projects in Jakarta and Bali, along with a sustainable approach to dive operations and education. For us to be more educated and take part in this conservation of marine life, let's all welcome Mr. Leon.
Okay, thank you, Kathleen. And don't forget for students, please turn on your camera. Okay, so we can interact more effectively and more fun. Okay, don't forget your camera. So that's the purpose of the camera there, right? Okay, so without further ado, Mr. Leon Boy, please.
Hi, everybody. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Is the video and everything okay? Great.
Yes.
Okay, thank you for such a nice introduction. Thank you for having me here. It's very nice to be able to speak to you. I'm much better in person, but you know, since now we can only do this, it's still great to be here. Thank you to everybody for allowing me to be here. So today, I just want to share. Let me share my screen, yeah?
Yes, sure.
Okay, is that coming up okay? All right.
Yes, good.
So today I just wanted to talk to everybody real quickly about.
Just buy it and buy. Why she cannot buy? See, look, it's his own money anyway.
Hello? Can you hear me? Can you see the screen?
Who's speaking just now?
Okay, so I just wanted to share
never
with you about scuba diving and conservation, and pretty much my journey throughout this process, you know, all the years that I've been diving. So let me cut straight into it. Did you all know that the Earth is made up of 70% water? right? It's quite a lot of water. So that means there's only 30% left on the earth. Any divers here? Anybody love to swim? I think there's a you can put it in the chat. I can read it later. But yeah, if there are any divers here, please raise your hand, say hello. Nice to see you. And the rest of you who are non-divers, yeah, I hope you enjoy your 30%. But you should be able to. If you're a swimmer, there's no reason why you can't come diving with us. So let me just give you a bit of history. This is a little world map that shows where I dive. It's pretty much US, Mexico for cave diving, and all over Asia. So Asia, because of this, as my introduction was, as they mentioned, I love being surrounded by fish. And you can see that site is pretty amazing. This was in Sipadan in Malaysia more than 10 years ago. And let me give you a bit of history, how I became a diver. I used to be in the national water polo team. This was when I was kind of your age. So I was always very comfortable in the water. And when, I stopped playing competitively, I started diving, and it was a very natural progression being in the water. Except now that it wasn't so tiring, I didn't have to tread water for so long. And then I started teaching. I started diving more and more, and I started teaching diving. And I felt that this was something really nice to do. I was helping people share the passion for the ocean, helping to impact people's lives in terms of what they could see in the marine environment. And then from then on, I started Livingseas, became a business, and then just wanted to create more and more of an impact. That's when I started to think about, okay, I'm from Singapore, there's not much diving there. All the diving that we do, we have to travel. And I found myself always traveling to Indonesia because it's such a beautiful country with so much coastline, so much natural beauty underwater that it made sense to, kind of do something here because I'd be close to the ocean and I didn't have to travel so much. So Bali was where I first found a place and I decided to settle here. I start a business here and start to develop the local community here as well. In 2016, I then expanded into Jakarta, started diving the Seribu Islands. I don't know if any of you have been there. A nice place, a lot of islands. We used to do weekend trips there. So big community we have in Jakarta, and really great lah. Lots of ups and downs though. I mean, now Jakarta, our operation there has closed because of the pandemic, unfortunately. I'm still trying to find a way to reopen that this year. But yeah, doing business as an entrepreneur, it's really fulfilling because you can impact a lot of people, you can impact a lot of lives by sharing what you're passionate about. But also, yeah, you have to weather the storms as they come. So I've already set up 4 or 5 different dive centers now, and still going on, still continuing to rebuild. As you can see, this was a photo from Jakarta. I think it was Independence Day 2018. This was our Jakarta community out in Seribu. So diving, it's very community based, and we build a lot of friendships over the years. And even in Bali, this was a group from Singapore came to visit me in 2018. You can see the beauty of the ocean right behind the picture there. So yeah, diving is great for that. But when I started, this was the kind of diving that I did, technical diving. So most people do recreational diving, which is shallower, simpler, shallow, warm water dives. Very fun, very interesting. But at the same time, being younger, wanted to go deeper, wanted to go explore wrecks, wanted to go do more, explore as far as I could. And so doing that kind of diving, you see there are many, many more tanks, rather than just one, many, many more types of gear. But that allowed me to dive wrecks. So this was some of the pictures of me. Top left was Seven Skies in South China Sea. This was back in 2007. On the right is Philippines. That was all the way inside the wreck. That big silty looking thing is actually the engine of a ship. So pretty cool. And then on the bottom left, that's me in Bali, in Colombo, diving the USAT Liberty. And this opened up, going deeper into diving and exploring more, allowed me to travel a lot. For example, this picture, I'm in Mexico. This is diving one of the caves. This is the entrance of a cave. So we're diving there, exploring these holes in the ground, basically. Also very interesting, beautiful place, but it's so far from here. So I never really went back very often. Diving caves also. Let me tell you a story. Funny story. I used to dive Asia, right? And there's so much life, so much reef, so much fish. And then when I went to Mexico, it's all rock. So as I'm diving the cave, I go in, maybe 2 hours I'm swimming in, 2 hours I'm swimming out. And I turn left, it's a rock. Turn right, it's a rock. And my buddy behind me told me later on that the only time I stopped to look at something was when there was this little white albino worm that was swimming around. It was the only time I stopped in 4 hours of swimming to look at something. And that's when I realized that, my true passion lies in life, in seeing life, in seeing corals, the abundance of life on a coral reef. And that kind of cemented in me that that's what I wanted to do. So life from big to small. That's me on the left. That's me with a whale shark in Jakarta. This I think was 2018. And then when I was doing technical diving in the South China Sea, on the right, that's me with another whale shark. Maybe 2006. Yeah, very long ago. Right? So this is really what I'm talking about. This is the kind of dives that I do most of all right now in Bali. So corals, there's so much stuff to see. Every surface in the ocean is covered with some form of life. And that's, as I mentioned, what I'm really passionate about. I want to be able to give back life in a sense, to help build this life, make it richer, make it more diverse. So I'll come back to that in a bit. But let me explain to you about corals and coral triangle. So the coral triangle in the whole world is actually the place where it's got the most amount of coral diversity in the world. And you can see in the map there, about half of Indonesia is inside that coral triangle. So we're right at the tip, if you can see in the bottom left of that triangle, that's where Bali is. So the corals here are very rich and very nice to see. And, part of the reason why I'm so interested in coral is because, I started out with wrecks. And it's interesting, it's challenging. Then, I really like fish as well, being surrounded by fish, surrounded by life. But I got to thinking, the coral reef is actually what keeps everything else alive, right? Without the reef, you don't get fish. It provides food for humans and marine life. It also provides nursery areas for fish. So I realized that, through the years that I've dived in Thailand, Philippines, Malaysia, and given that I've been diving for so many years and I go back to the same places over and over again, I actually see the place not get better. The corals start to disappear, corals start to get worse, and the fish life and everything else doesn't actually come back on its own. Not in the time that I've been diving there myself. So I've seen this with my own eyes, given the experience that I have diving in many places. So that kind of made me want to do something about it. There are many threats to coral reefs, right? This is a graphic I stole online. You can read up more about it. But this one explains overfishing. Other threats like climate change, right? This is quite debatable in the US, but I think from my own perspective, seeing it with my own eyes, there's definitely some changes there that are not nice to see. So let me show you some pictures of what reefs look like now, as compared to a rich reef that I think I showed you earlier. This is actually a more common sight on dive sites now. We see this regularly. So all that, you see all the white stuff, that's all dead coral. And the brown, hairy looking thing, that's all algae. This is not what a reef should look like. In fact, you see here on the right and the left. On the left, that's the same reef that has been bleached. So it all looks white. This can happen because of the water getting too hot, or some kind of other disease or reasons for it, right? On the right, you see the corals look brown. That's really the natural color. So when the water gets too warm, the coral will release this algae that lives inside of the coral that uses sunlight to photosynthesize and gives them nutrients as well. So when the corals get too hot and it releases this zooxanthellae, which is the algae, then it actually gets very sick and might die. Yeah, so this is a common sight, and I've seen it with my own eyes. So something to be worried about. In 2009, 2010, it got really, really bad in Tioman when I was diving there. In Thailand, in Similan, and in Maldives as well. And as far as I know, those places haven't really recovered from it yet either. Another big issue is waste coming out from developments or from shore. So if a hotel is built on the beach and it doesn't want to treat its sewage properly, then they just release it into the ocean. I don't even want to know what's in that brown cloud, right? But you can see it's coming out all over the reef, and it's fish and it's coral right next to it. This is also a common sight. In fact, we see this almost daily when we go diving here in Bali. There's so much trash out on the reef. Let me talk a bit more about this later, but you can see that's all quite real stuff. Apart from plastic bottles, there are also plastic bags. I know this is quite, people are getting more and more aware of plastic bags now. People are starting to use, Bali has banned plastic bags. People are starting to use these reusable bags when they go shopping, which I think is great. We've been doing that for years. But let me bring it back down and give you a very recent photo. I don't know how many of you have been seeing social media, but the picture on the left was Kuta Beach in Bali just after New Year. I think it was January 2nd or January 3rd. And look at the amount of trash that's there. Right? It's quite scary. So this is real story. And we think that all of this trash comes out from the villages when people throw trash onto the forest. They just leave it by the side of the road. And when the rains come, I think it's been raining in Bandung, it's been raining here a lot in Bali. And when the rains come, it pushes all of this trash out into the rivers. On the right, that's a river in Bali as well. And you can see how the trash is all collected. When the rains get big enough, all of these rivers will just spit out all of this trash into the ocean. And what you get is it all ends up on the beach, like in the picture on the left. Here's some more pictures from that same incident. How do I say? Yeah, true story. These are things that we see for ourselves. And this is just what you see on the beach. We all have an idea of what the beach should look like, right? We have an idea that the beach should be pristine, there should be water coming in, that the waves are breaking, the sand is clean. And this kind of images make us sad, right? That's to do with standards. We know that the beach is not supposed to look like that. But we don't connect to the fact that, all these ultra little water cups are thrown out onto the road, and then, where do they end up? And to be honest, this is only what we see on the surface, on the beach. When this plastic stays in the ocean, where do you think it ends up? It actually ends up on the reef. It's just that people don't see it as often, and it doesn't get, so much social media attention. Okay, so what can we do about it? Ultimately, if you want to know more, I don't want to spend too much time talking about that, but it's a little bit depressing. But if you want to learn more, you can you can contact us. We actually have a couple of free courses from SSI. They've been nice enough to provide us with some materials that we can share with everybody. And if you're interested in learning more about the threats to coral, the threats to the ocean environment, then there's this Blue Oceans course that you can do. It's totally online. It's very easy to do. And if you want to, my colleague Albert is actually putting our instructor's number and contact information in the chat. You can contact him directly, register SSI, and do these courses. Blue Oceans is about how to maintain the oceans and keep it sustainable. And marine ecology is a course about, they're two separate courses. Yeah? Marine ecology is about different types of ecosystems that you find in the ocean. Right now, they're both free, so all you need to do is register and download the materials to learn. If you're interested, please contact my colleague Dama. He will follow up with you and you can start learning about that. So this is all free, don't worry, it's a gift from us to you, right? And so what can we do about it, right? I think learn more, that helps. So contact Dama about it. And let me tell you what I did about it, because this is something that is not new. This is something, these are problems that we've been seeing for many years. And like as I was introduced, I got a little bit more serious about conservation. I wanted to do something about it. So this is about Livingseas. We started in Singapore in 1999, and we came to Bali in 2012, and then Jakarta in 2016. And along the way, I think I started researching, I started getting concerned about conservation since 2009. So about 5 years in the diving, traveling a lot, started, alongside teaching, alongside running the business, started to be concerned about the reef and started to want to do more about it. And that's when we started researching, started doing more about conservation, and finally started our own experimenting with our own projects since 2012. So here's our core values: conservation, education, and ultimately what we're trying to do is to develop an appreciation of the marine ecosystem and to, of course, maintain it. Yeah. This is also a common sight: divers impacting the reef. You can see pictures of divers sitting, standing, lying down on the reef. That's not ideal. So we don't train divers this way. We do try to make divers adopt best practices. And as you can see, the photo there is our student who's on a 5th dive ever, being able to hold her position and not impact the reef. So let me give you some idea about the kinds of projects that we've done before. This was in Gili Trawangan, where we were planting corals using a bio-rock system. This was in 2011. 2012, we started our own project in Tioman, where we were based. Here you can see us doing a survey with a survey line. So basically, we're trying to find out what is the reef like and take good data to compare against in 5-10 years. That was surveys. When we came to Bali, I wanted to do more. I wanted to not just take away the negative effects. But if you keep on clearing the plastic, that's great. You don't want the plastic there, but you are removing the negative. You're not actually creating a positive. So when I was in Bali, I wanted to do something that created something new, right? To develop something or build something that could allow the corals to grow. So we're adding rather than taking away the negatives. And that was kind of my goal, and still is my goal right now. So we tried with this bamboo structure. Didn't work so well, but we learned a lot in the process. And we also tried doing that same thing with bottles, concrete bottles. Well, not concrete bottles, but bottles that we cast in concrete that will allow us to secure the coral so that it's out of the sand and away from predators. And it's in the coral, it's in the current, so it's able to get the nutrients that it needs. Right now, we're doing this project. This picture is, if you look closely, you can see the structures that we use underneath. It's actually a metal structure called a reef star that holds the coral fragments. Now, in the picture, you see the corals look quite big, and there's a lot of fish there. Below that, you see all the sand, and that's what the reef bed looked like. It was all sand. And when we put in these structures, we gave habitat for the corals to grow. And in the process, the corals grew. When they started out, they were the size of your finger. And now they're this size. This is about 1.5 years into the project. So when the corals grew, it made habitat, it made space for the fish to now come back and live in it, which is great. That's kind of the goal all the way. So right now, we have a few hundred reef stars in Bali in 2 different sites. We've got a few bottle reefs as well. And we have some in Jakarta, which unfortunately we have not been able to manage or to maintain or have a look at this whole past year. But I hope you'll go back and look at it. Our goal in the long term is to get 7,000 over, covering about half a hectare of the ocean in Bali. Here are some pictures of the corals growing month to month. This is the kind of monitoring and maintenance that we do. So every month we make sure to go back and look at the corals and see whether they're growing. They record some data and collect some signs for it. And in this picture, you can see in month 1, it's kind of small. Then by month 6, it's grown almost twice the size. Same with a few of the other corals here, as you can see. I kind of like this one because it grows out in so many directions. Pretty cool. This one as well. Right, you can see it was just like a small bit, and then by month 6, you got so many different branches of it. So our long-term goals is ultimately to not just do and build the reef by ourselves, but also to involve people as a way to make an impact on them. So apart from teaching them the good diving practices to how to do this work, but also what do you call it? Like a more emotional impact, whereby they've actually helped to build something. And wherever else this person dives in the future, may it be Komodo or Raja Ampat, they're going to appreciate coral a little bit more and not damage any more than they should, or well, they shouldn't. In fact, Miss Cherry came to do this with us before. So if you want a first-hand account, you can ask her if you have the chance. Impacts that we're trying to make on nature, as I mentioned, coral reefs are the base of the marine ecosystem. If we can do this, we want to be able to return life into the reef, not just corals, but fish and other invertebrate life like crabs, mantis shrimp, even turtles and cuttlefish have been starting to come back into the area as well. So that's great. On people, it's not just appreciation for the marine environment, but it's also, waste management and awareness of the things that they do, daily habits that contribute to either make the environment better or worse. As divers, we can get people to look for new career opportunities in diving, fisheries, or scientific industries. And then economy as well. Here in Padang Bay, one of the major things major parts of the economy here is all the diving tourism. And if there's no reef left and no one comes here to dive, then the local village here won't do so well in the long run. So by being able to rebuild this, it also helps not just the tourist economy, but because the fish come back and they use these reefs as a nursery, we will also increase the fact that we can catch more fish later on. Yeah. So these are some pictures of what our sites look like before we install our reef stars. So you see, it's all barren. All that small rubble, it's actually all dead coral. Right? So it didn't used to look like this long time ago. Why it looked like that, I don't know. But basically, by the time we came along, they all dead. So it's our turn to kind of rebuild it. And the photo you see there at the bottom, after we've installed it, after about 7 months of growth, you can see that there's some life and some fish and some coral growing out. And then in Mimpang, our other side, same thing, same picture from before. You can see the life starts to come back. So now, that's what I did about it. What can you do about it? So a couple of quick pointers from me. There's a lot we can do, but I'm sure you've heard this before. Reduce, reuse, recycle. Not just electricity, right? Like when you go out of a room, turn off the lights. Reuse your plastics. Recycle if possible. All the goods that you use, don't use it once, right? Keep it for a long time. Reuse it for whatever purpose you can find. That would help. It will go a long way if everyone saves one piece of trash per day, and reuses that. Appreciate Indonesia. Go diving. Traveling in Indonesia is great. You've got mountains, you've got lakes, you've got valleys, nice forests, so many different kinds of areas on land that you can go visit. But if you only ever, as an Indonesian, if you only ever stay on land, you're missing half the story. If you get to go diving, you get to see the beauty of Indonesia, both above and below the water. If you think about it, a lot of the world, most of the world comes to Indonesia to go diving. And this is your own country and you haven't gone. That's a bit of a shame if you ask me. And the last thing, if you do go diving, learn proper diving techniques. Don't destroy it. Now when you're walking in the forest, you're walking in the forest. But when you go diving, you are part of the reef. You are in between. You are under. You are side to side. So it's with good proper diving techniques, you can really enjoy yourself more and do it at the same time that you do not damage anything. Yeah. At the end of the day, we want our activities to be sustainable so that we can come back and look at it more, right? Then if you do go diving, come plant some coral with me. So, in line with that, I wanted to give all of you something. So we created here at Livingseas, we created a 6-day reef rehabilitation experience for schools. So I want to be able to offer this to you, even if you're not a diver. Over 6 days, we'll be able to teach you how to be a diver, and this certification allows you to dive anywhere around the world. And it consists of 12 dives, and we're going to throw in a couple of specialty courses like perfect buoyancy, coral identification, fish identification, and then also get a chance to participate and plant your own coral, and also do a beach cleanup activity where we actually go out and see what happens to all this trash that's thrown in the forest. What do you get, right? Like I mentioned, what we want to do is do a hands-on experience to give back to nature, and also something you can take away with you. You know, the certification and experience, I think, is worthwhile. You know, because it's not just you don't only need to dive here. You can also go explore Komodo and Raja Ampat in the future. What we want to do is to be able to give back, right, to students, to the local community as well. And then ultimately educate and build up. We want to spread this word. I think your generation is the one that would be great to be able to go back home and to implement this in Bandung as well, if possible. Maybe not the ocean stuff, but at least the waste management part of it. This is a quick overview of what the 6-day plan looks like. And, you know, don't expect you to read all of it right now. If you are interested, again, contact Dharma. We can send you more information about this later on. If you are keen, you know, we may create a good price for you. It's under 12 liter, 11.9. We're looking for 12 students, minimum of 4, and that includes everything. So once you land in Bali, we'll cover everything except dinner, and you know the whole experience is yours to enjoy. So if that's pretty much what I want to talk about. I think I want to go over time. So thank you very much. If you have any questions, please ask away in the chat. Let me get on the chat and answer you directly. So yes, let me turn off the screen share. Okay, let me look at the chat. So let me go from the top. Yeah. Okay. Nice of you to say it's beautiful. So yes, it does take a long time to grow. I think coral is, let me just answer that real quick. Coral is an animal and it grows its own skeleton on the inside. So there are many different factors, from the nutrients to damages that it helps, damage from other environment. There are other environmental factors. And what do you call it? It does take a long time to grow. Like the finger coral, it takes about a year to grow. It grows much slower than a tree would. Like, you know, it's very simple. If you just leave a ground empty, like a piece of land empty, in a month you're gonna get weeds, you're gonna get plants growing, you're gonna get papaya tree growing, you know, whatever. It just keeps growing on land. But in the ocean, it doesn't do that. For example, I've been diving in that site where I showed you with all the coral rubble and the sand. That has looked that way for more than 10 years. And that's why I really felt that it was important that we do something to help the reef grow out because it wasn't going to do it by itself. So bit by bit, that's what we're trying to do, even though it's taking a long time. Gerald asks, is it true that using sunscreen and going to the ocean is harmful to corals? Yes, it is. Now, there are two factors here. There's this chemical called oxybenzone in common sunscreen. And that's a chemical. Chemicals for the ocean environment, especially corals, is not good. I mean, each person is not going to use like 5 liters of sunscreen every time they go out into the ocean. But if you count the little bit that you use multiplied by the hundreds of thousands of people going into the ocean, and that volume of chemical now can be harmful to the corals, right? So there is actually we have been working with this company called Vividum, and then they actually make a natural sunblock, non-oxybenzone, and it's all natural materials. So it's great as well if you do go to the ocean to look for something else that actually says reef safe sunblock. That would be helpful. So if you do go to the ocean and want to use sunblock, if you're the type that gets burned very easily, definitely look out for reef safe sunblock. I think my colleague Albert is going to type the name of the one that we use here, so you can give it a shot. Is diving difficult for an absolute beginner? Thank you, Tasha. That's a great question, very common question. Diving, well, we take 3 days to do a diving course, and 3 days is pretty much the absolute minimum, where we learn how the skills of how to manage ourselves in the water. Now, as long as you are comfortable in the water, you don't even need to be a good swimmer, but as long as you are comfortable in the water, I think diving is possible for anyone, barring medical conditions, of course. But yeah, we've had beginners come in and at the time of their life because it's a new experience for everyone. So yeah, I would say we get absolute beginners all the time. If you're keen, no time when you're young, it's the best time to try it out. Okay, Edzo asks, what do you think is the biggest threat to marine life? I think the simple answer there is humans. Don't mean to be bad-mouth humans, but a lot of the effect that on marine life comes from humans, or directly or indirectly, from diver damage, from direct impact on boats, to climate change, which is kind of indirect, from coastal development, where they build hotels on the beach, from agricultural waste, where they don't manage your fertilizers, and then it rains and all the fertilizer flows out into the ocean. Basically, if you think about it, everything starts from the sea, but in the end, anything on land, once the rains come, the waters come, everything flows into the ocean. So the oceans have been here doing well way before we have, and it was fine. We came along, and then now what happens is that we're having this problem with the reef. So yeah, humans, but it's not something direct that we can work on. It's I think a collective effort like that. WL Chong asks, what's the longest time spent diving? More than an hour? Well, the longest dive I've ever done is about almost 6 hours. If you look at the picture where I'm carrying a lot of tanks, like a few tanks on the side, a few tanks on the back, that's kind of the diving I used to do. But now, when I did that 6-hour dive, that was because I was under the water planting corals. So it takes a bit of time where we're trying to build up a bigger area, and there's a lot of different corals to collect, a lot of different corals to plant. So we ended up spending almost 6 hours doing that. It was fun, don't get me wrong. It's not like it was a bad thing. But we were pretty tired after. And yes, coral, why we ask? Yes, coral is an animal. It's not a plant. Plants, I would say, there are sea plants like sea grass and algae, but coral itself is not, it's an animal. So what you see, when you look at a coral, what you see is actually the flesh on the outside. And the white skeleton is actually on the inside. And that's made of limestone or calcium carbonate. So it makes its own, skeleton. Jackie asks, do you have any advice for people who are afraid of deep water? Now, when we go diving, we don't throw you directly into the deep water. It's not like we go diving straight away and you look down and you can't see anything. You start off very gradually. You start off in the pool. So a swimming pool is something I think most of you or all of you should be familiar with. So from the swimming pool, you get some experience learning how to manage the gear, and then after that, we go to the ocean and we go to a site that's very shallow. So when you look down, you can still see the bottom, right? You can still see the seabed. And that's where we go down. And then from the seabed, you're kind of swimming around the seabed the whole time. So you don't get the experience of suddenly, oh, there's nothing below you, right? If that's what you're thinking of deep water. So as long as it's something below you, I've had students before who were afraid of deep water, and once they've had that experience, found out actually it's not that bad. Because when you're diving, the equipment helps you to manage your position, so you don't really have to worry about how to, you don't really have to worry about being in danger. And that's what the course is for, to teach you how to manage yourself. Magnolia asks, when diving, do you ever fear what is within the water? A good question. I think I've been diving so long that I don't fear what's in the water anymore. The danger when diving mostly is, I would say, current, or not in the water, but the water movement. There are ways to manage it. A lot of diving dangers are actually, how do I put it, controllable, And that's what part of what doing a diving course is about, to learn where are the dangers, how to keep yourself safe, how to know when it's going to get dangerous and how to move away from the danger, and how to manage yourself so you keep yourself safe. So I think with knowledge that you get during the course, the fear tends to go away. You're only afraid if you don't know what's out there. And I think I've been diving long enough that most things I think are manageable. So yeah, that's an experience. Okay. A great question from Winston. He says, how can diving save marine life? Let me give you two reasons, right? Two ways. One is, as I've explained in the webinar, we create new habitat, we create new space, new homes, if you will, for marine life. It's like if you have a big piece of land out in Bekasi, let's say, and there's nothing there, no one's going to live there. But if a developer comes and starts to build houses, build nice houses there, people will buy the house and start to move in. So it's kind of the same thing with us. There's this big piece of sand under the sea, and what do you call that? No fish, no coral is living there. So we come in, we create some houses, and then now marine life starts to come in again. Same kind of concept. So that's one reason. Same. The second reason is by going down to appreciate what's there. If you go down diving and you fall in love with the marine life, you're going to come up and you're going to tell people about it. You're going to come up and tell your parents, you're going to tell your friends, you're going to say, hey man, the marine life is so amazing. I want to do something about it. And I think the problem, or not say the problem, but the reason why marine conservation isn't such a big thing is that not many people have seen it with their own eyes. You hear a lot about it, about shark finning, you hear a lot about the oceans dying, you see it on social media, but until you see it for yourself with your own two eyes and you experience it with your own experience, that takes on a different meaning, takes on a different meaning to you. Now you've seen it for yourself. It's not just some news that you hear on the TV or on your mobile phone. Yeah. On the opposite side, right, Rainer says, can diving harm marine life? Yes. I think if a diver does not have good skills, like in the picture I showed you earlier, people sitting on the reef, people not knowing where the position is. For example, if you go to, I don't know if you have this experience, but if you go to the sawah and there's rice growing, and you go run around in the sawah, what's going to happen to all the rice? It's all going to get smashed and destroyed, right? So it's kind of the same idea when we go diving and we're not careful about where we step or where we go or where we move. Then yes, we can damage coral or we can impact marine life there. Same with the question just now about sunscreen. Is these small things that make a difference, you know? Why we ask how big is the impact if we reuse and recycle? So this one is it's hard to explain how big the impact is when this is really a collective action. Now, one person, if you think for yourself, reflect on yourself, how many pieces of plastic do you use a day? Just run this exercise for me for, like, let's say a week. You know, take note of how much plastic you use per day. And then you multiply that by what's the population of Indonesia? 260 million. So if you think about it, if one person uses, let's say, 5 pieces of plastic in a day, and you multiply that by 270 million, that's what? Almost a billion, yeah, almost a billion pieces of plastic in a single day. Now, if you can reduce your own from 5 pieces to 1 piece, you might think, okay, I'm just taking away like 4 pieces, you know, of plastic out of 1 billion. But if everybody can think the same way as you, and this is the change that we're trying to make, right? If everyone can think that way, then that 1 piece, that 1 billion will become 270 million pieces. And that's kind of the point. You know, this is not something that each individual can make a huge change in, but it's a collective effort. So if we don't do it, and everybody thinks the same, okay, I'm not going to do it, someone else will do it. Don't worry, you know, someone else will take care of it. And if everybody thinks that way, then we're still going to stay with that 1 billion pieces of plastic, basically. Okay, great question. W.L. Chong says, have you ever seen a great white shark on a dive? Do they attack divers? I can tell you for a fact they do not attack divers. I've never heard of a shark attacking divers. Normally when we see sharks, they run away. You know, small sharks, big sharks, they run away because underwater, we are the ones that are very noisy. You know, we're making a lot of bubbles, we're making a lot of noise and moving around. And that's their home, right? Imagine like you go to a house, your friend's house, and then there's a dog there. Normally the dog will bark and try to run away from you, right? Because now you're the intruder. So great whites specifically, they don't really come around Indonesia. They're normally around Australia because they like cold water. They like really cold water, and they don't really live in the tropics where we are. So yeah, Jack has a very good question here. What is the ultimate goal of environmental or any conservation? So conservation and restoration, I think, are two different words, or rehabilitation. All these different terms bandied about in this world, right, regarding conservation. So what we're trying to do is not just to conserve, to maintain, or to rebuild, right? Ultimate goal is to not say return nature to how it was before we came along, but also to be able to, you know, repair some of the damage that has been done. For example, if we leave nature as it is, will it grow back? Maybe, maybe not. Right? Will it take a long enough time? You know. So this is something that's very difficult to quantify, and I think a lot of better, smarter people than me have been doing this on a long time. So you can Google that up in terms of how much would be help. I can't give you a straight answer, but all I know is that in my area, in my small patch of the world, I want to be able to see that there's a reef that lives now that I've helped it. You know, before I came along, there was no reef. Now, after doing what we do, there's a reef. That makes me happy. You know, some people like gardening, growing trees in the backyard, and growing tomatoes to eat. I like growing coral. So yeah, coral farmer. You know. Okay, so I think that's all the questions. Thank you very much. Great questions there. Let me stop this sharing. Hello. It's me again.
Thank you, Leon.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
That's all the time we have.
It's very good. So that's a very good insight and knowledge for us on behalf of SBP. That I'd like to say thank you to you, Mr. Leon, for this very short yet fruitful webinar. about the marine life conservation, and thank you also for sharing your passion and experience as well, which we believe that it could become something valuable to us as well. Okay, so to all the students, you may express your gratitude to Mr. Leon. Even, yeah, you can turn the audio on, or you can just type it on the chat box.
Thank you so much.
Okay, so now I'll just call Jessica to close this.
Thank you, Mr. Leon, for the eye-opening and inspiring talk. The talk helps us to understand more about the importance of conserving the marine life as they are vital. We mustn't wait any longer to start caring about the life of the marine creatures and take action immediately. Thank you once again, Mr. Leon.
Thank you, everyone. So hope to see you one day, hopefully, if possible. And yeah, come help me plant some corals. All right. See y'all.